Chapter 9. On Friday nights in the summer, the ballpark was the place to be. Set in the campground area overlooking the lake, it hosted a small canteen and bar where the locals came to play, drink, and talk. Sterling decided she might as well let everyone know she was home, not that the rumor would not have already circulated that she was back. Small-town news flew much faster than city news. Usually the entire population of Pendle knew exactly what was happening within an hour of the event itself. The gossip train was that efficient. "Do you have any dented ones?" Sterling asked Pete at the bar. Everyone knew that whoever was bartending would keep back any dented cans, selling them at a lesser price than the regular ones. "One left," Pete acknowledged, setting the Palm Bay on the bar. "I'll take it." Sterling fished in her pocket for the money. It was an extravagance. However, Sterling felt she could nurse it all evening long, then just have water, which would be free. Turning around, she looked over a sea of familiar faces, all gossiping about crop prices and whose child did what at the school play. She nodded and smiled at a number of people who were at the picnic tables. No one appealed to her, even as she had plenty of invites to sit down and talk. Scanning the area, she noted Dixby Cooley sitting out on the dock at the lake not far off. She had not seen Dixby in years. Making her way over, Sterling carefully lowered herself on the dock beside Dixby, putting her crutches to the side. It was only a little chilly, but not bad outside tonight. Looking up, she squinted at the moon through the trees. "Sterling Denver, back from the city." Dixby took a sip from his beer. "You staying long?" Sterling shrugged. "You can stop calling me that. Sterling Denver is just a pen name." "It's what you wanted to be called the last time I saw you." Dixby had a glance at her. A smile tugged at Sterling's lips. "The last time I saw you, I had a flare gun pointed at your privates." Even in the dark, Sterling could see that Dixby had the good grace to blush a little. "I've been meaning to apologize for that." "It was a long time ago." Sterling shrugged at the memory. They had been on a boat on this very lake, making out and going too far. "I always wondered what made you spook." He gestured to the lake with the bottle of beer. "I know I was pressuring you, and I'm sorry about that. I was a stupid kid back then. Yet I was backing off just before you pulled out that flare gun." "You were talking forever, Dixby," Sterling said dryly as she studied him. He had grown into his gangly form and was not that hard on the eyes. Not as handsome as Jake Ramsley, though. "We were kissing, and you started spouting off on how we could renovate your granddaddy's house. You wanted to plant a garden, go farming, have me barefoot and in the kitchen. I don't even cook." "At the time, I think I might have put up with your poor cooking." He grinned at her. "Like I said, I was young and stupid." "You would have regretted it," Sterling assured him. "I didn't want to be a farm wife. I still don't." "That's right. You're the big city writer," Dixby commented without any ill will. "Not anymore." She gave a forlorn sigh. "I'm blacklisted. I can't get a job. I took the last month's salary I had and spent it foolishly on a career gamble and lost spectacularly. Since I can't send the money home, we missed the final payment again for the loans on the company, and now the bank has shut us down. I came back to try to help support Mom and Dad." "Sarah Lee." Dixby let the name roll off his tongue. "Everyone here knew it was just a matter of time for Hawkins' furniture factory to close down. We aren't competitive in a global world, no matter how hard your family tried. The community is grateful for the fact that your family managed to keep it open as long as it could." Sterling struggled to keep tears from her eyes. She felt guilty for not being able to help with the payment due this month. She had been sending money home for years to help out, but it had not been enough. "Hey," Dixby bumped her shoulder gently with his shoulder. "Don't get all sentimental on me." She wiped her eyes and took a sip from her can of Palm Bay and decided to change the subject. "I hear you're engaged." Dixby grimaced, fiddling with the label on his beer bottle. "That is a fine mess." "What do you mean?" Sterling frowned as she pondered his reaction. It didn't seem like he was happy to be engaged. Dixby sighed. "Your brother is not the smartest of men." "Care to explain that remark before I go and find another flare gun?" Sterling said dryly. "Melody loves Brant. Brant loves Melody. She wants to be with him. He's letting his pride stand in the way of being with her, because he believes that he can't provide for her. Dixby shook his head. Why it is an issue if she's a breadwinner for a while, I don't know, except it hurts his pride, so he won't follow his feelings and be with Melody. Shameful, as my mama would say. Then how do you end up engaged to your best friend's girl? She raised an eyebrow. That, Dixby growled, was a moment of stupidity. We're all right here at the canteen, and Melody starts spouting off about how she was not going to wait for Brant anymore. She wanted a family and a home of her own. She was saying that she was seeing someone. Brant did not take it too well, yet his pride kept him from declaring himself to Melody. At this point, I could see what sort of disaster was happening, but the two of them bullheaded friends of mine just kept arguing with each other. Him saying he hoped she would be happy, even as it was breaking his heart. Her wishing he would just call her bluff and finally get on with them becoming a couple. Melody had hoped to make him jealous. It wasn't working. He took a long swallow of beer. In a moment of absolute genius, and that's sarcasm if you're wondering, I stepped up and announced that the fellow Melody was dating was me. Brant just about swallowed his teeth. I thought for sure it would get the right reaction out of him. Let him think Melody was not waiting for him, then instead of digging at his heels and doing nothing about their feelings, maybe he would finally tell her that he wanted to be her boyfriend or more. That didn't work, Sterling said softly. She knew her brother. When he had an idea in his head, he generally did not budge. If he thought he was unworthy of Melody, then he would not ever give her any hope for a future between the two of them. No, it did not work. Dixby worked on the label again. I doubled down and told him how it all made sense. Melody wanted a family and a home. I had a house, and said some drivel about how Joy needed a mama, so we decided we would suit. That Melody and I had a friendship going for us, and since Brant didn't seem to want Melody, I had taken it upon myself to propose, and she accepted. Unless, of course, Brant knew a reason why we should not get married. He said nothing? She looked at Dixby in the dark. It was obvious he regretted the whole episode. Who is Joy? You don't know? He paused, bottle raised part way as he turned to look at her. I got married. I have a daughter, Joy Grace Cooley. You're married? Sterling could not quite believe it. No one told me. I suppose they didn't think it was important. Dixby shrugged. You being the big city girl, you might not want to hear all the local gossip. Who is she? She asked with curiosity. Sterling had never thought of Dixby being mature enough to be a husband and father. Somehow, Sterling had the idea that everyone in Pendle would have just stopped moving forward in her absence, but that was not what had happened. How can you be married and engaged at the same time? Her name was Grace. She came from Beaufort. Right pretty little thing. Dixby's smile faded. She passed 3 years ago from cancer. I'm sorry. Sterling was. She had always known that she and Dixby would not end up together, even when they were dating. It was only right that he should move on and be happy with someone, Sterling decided. It was too bad he was alone again. I'm glad of the time we had. She gave me joy in more ways than one. Dixby looked over the lake and gathered his thoughts. It's a sad thing when two people who love each other so much are so stubborn. If both of them only knew what it's like to be someone you love, how life can be so short and fragile. What did Brant do when you told him that you and Melody were getting married? Questioned Sterling, partially because she wanted to know the rest of the story, and partially to get his mind off his deceased wife. He punched me. A grin came to Dixby's face, broke my nose, and gave me a black eye out of the process. Never was I so satisfied by being hit by another person. I thought, finally! Brant is going to do what he should have done years ago. Tell Melody that he's the one for her and persuade her to choose him. Not that it would have taken much persuading. Instead, Brant swallowed it all down, shook his finger in my face, told me to treat Melody right, and walked out. We haven't talked much since then. You're still pretending to be engaged? Frowned Sterling. Melody won't back down. She's decided to remain engaged. I suppose I let her, but this farce has gone on long enough. It's past time to end it." He breathed in deeply. "My biggest worry is that if I do, Melody will find some other willing dupe to be her boyfriend and get married to. Right now, I can stretch out this to be the longest engagement on Earth, or at least as long as it takes for them two to get some sense and get together." "You're a good friend, Dixby," Sterling commented. It was true, even if he might have gone about the situation the wrong way. Although Sterling was not sure there was a right way to do things between Melody and Brant. "I don't feel like one. I lost my best friend over this, and Melody is right miserable." Dixby grimaced and pulled the label off the bottle in one piece. "I told her the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be on her and Brant, but she just won't listen. Maybe you could talk some sense into her." Sterling shook her head at his hopeful gaze. "I'll try, but I'm not sure how much help that will be. I'm not exactly a success story in the area of love." "What, no big city guy caught your eye?" Dixby asked curiously. Sterling shrugged. "Not really." "Remember how I could always tell when you were lying?" he reminded her. "I can still tell." "There was one guy," she admitted reluctantly. "Who is he?" Dixby questioned curiously. "The guy who bought Dubious, the tabloid I wrote for, shut it down and then proceeded to backlist me so I can't write at any other paper in the country." Sterling looked at her dented can of Palm Bay. He whistled. "Must be a pretty rich guy if he can just buy up a tabloid business like that." "I wasn't after him for his money," Sterling confessed ruefully. "I was after a story. I wanted to take some pictures, write some articles, and drag his name through the tabloids because that's what I did, and it paid well so I could help out with the financials here at home for the family. I made him very angry. He felt betrayed and had every right to feel that way. I did betray him." Suddenly, the story was pouring out of her. How she snuck on the plane, the crash, and Jake's help as they struggled through the snow to the cabin. Dixby laughed as she talked about the bat, the argument over the stove, and finding the map with its story written on the back. She explained her worry over Jake being gone for so long, how they were rescued and going to the small town of Carver's Bend, where they were graciously taken care of by its residents, where Jake had found out the truth about who she was. "You are in love with him," Dixby stated kindly. He had wrapped an arm around her, and Sterling found herself leaning on his warmth. "I barely know him. We met 5 days ago," she protested. "Love comes at different times and in different ways for different people," Dixby mildly remarked. "When I saw Grace, I knew she was the one for me. It took me 3 months to get her to say yes to a date. Over a year before she said yes to one of my many proposals." "I like him, that's all," insisted Sterling. "It's really not anything more than that." "If he walked up to you right now, ready to forgive you for your part and asking forgiveness for his part, how would you feel?" Dixby questioned. "I don't know," she ventured morosely. She knew that was not going to happen. Dixby pulled back a little so he could look her in the eyes. "You don't know? That's it? You wouldn't feel relieved that this fight between the two of you was over? You wouldn't be jumping for joy on the inside that he's back in your life? You wouldn't want to wrap your arms around him, hold on tight, and never let him go?" Tears sprang to Sterling's eyes. "You know I would, even though I am mad at him." "Then you are in love," he stated baldly. "Now what are you going to do about it?" "Nothing." She wiped away the moisture in her eyes and let him settle her against his shoulder again. "He's mad at me, justifiably so. He might have liked me as a friend, but I ruined it. Jake does not want to see me." "How do you know? Have you asked him?" Dixby inquired calmly. "He bought my paper, threw me out on my ear, and made sure I would never have another position like it again in this country," she said wryly. "I think he hates my guts." "Hate is a passionate word. It's a lot like love," he remarked thoughtfully. "Jake does not love me," she insisted, wondering when Dixby's head had become so swelled that he thought he was an authority on love. Then again, he was a coolie, and they had an opinion on everything. Dixby paused, mulling over Sterling's sad story. "For a guy who does not love you, he went in overkill on your career. I think his feelings are involved. It doesn't matter. He's not going to forgive me. Sterling looked over the water, feeling hopeless. Did you ask him to? Asked Dixby. Did you apologize and ask for forgiveness? I didn't exactly get the chance. She closed her eyes as she remembered Jake's rage over being deceived. He's not in any mood to listen. I think you should write your story. The whole alone with Jake Ramsley thing, only without any exaggerations like you had a habit of putting in dubious. Dixby had read a few of her articles. You should publish it under Sterling Denver, otherwise known as Sarah Lee Hawkins from the tiny town of Pendle, our claim to fame. Don't forget to mention how sorry you are about the tabloid thing, and that you have fallen for him. Maybe he'll read it and come to our little town. No, thank you. Sterling shuddered. I've already put enough of the Ramsleys' private affairs into the limelight. I'm not going to do it again. Then how is he going to know how you feel? Dixby wondered at how people were so inclined to shy away from the person they wanted most. He supposed that everyone was always afraid of being vulnerable or making fools of themselves. Then again, being raised a coolie, he had never been afraid of making a fool of himself. That was one of the few perks of the family name. Sterling shrugged. I guess he won't. Like I said, he hates me anyways. I'm not exactly pleased with him either. Somehow, Dixby doubted that very much. If he were a betting man, he would place odds that Jake Ramsley was just as much affected by Sterling as she was with him. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Dixby did not have long to find out. The very next day he was getting gas at the gas bar with his daughter Joy and watched as a shiny rental car pulled up. How's it going? Dixby eyed the stranger as Dixby gassed up his rusting truck. The stranger was wearing an expensive suit and brand-name sunglasses as he began to pump some gas. New around town? Yes. The man looked at Dixby, assessing him in return from Dixby's worn work boots to Joy, who sat on her father's shoulders, humming a little song in her sundress. Are you local? Silly question. Everyone here was local except for this overdressed stranger. Dixby was surprised the man knew how to run a gas pump. He seemed the type who would just have people do it for him, even if the rental was not overly flashy. Yes, sir. You looking for someone or someplace around here? I have an address and a GPS. I'm sure I'll be fine. He gave a tight smile. Shutting off the pump, he put the gas cap back in place, then went into the building to pay. Snob, Dixby muttered. Good luck to Mr. Expensive Suit. GPS was not known to be the most reliable here, unless the address was directly in town. If he was searching for anything in the country, he might end up miles away from where he wanted to be. Sweetheart, you want to share a sundae after Daddy's done his rounds? Strawberry? Joy piped up with interest from Dixby's head in her little voice. Absolutely, Dixby promised. He would stick around town to see if the stranger came back. If he did, Dixby was going to have a prime time getting the fellow thoroughly lost. Finishing up at the pump, he went into the building to find the stranger at the till. There's a bank down the street. You'll have to leave the car here until you pay, Judy informed the man. Thank you, the stranger said curtly as he grabbed a gold credit card back and headed out the door. Dixby pulled out a couple of 20s, tossing them on the counter. Didn't know about your cash-only policy? It only says it on the pumps, the door, and the till. Judy rolled her eyes and took Dixby's money, popping it into the till. The bell rang as Katie Sutton came breathlessly into the gas bar, laying money on the counter. Here, Judy. Oh, hey, Dixby. If you happen to see my hubcap lying around, could you get it for me? I'm late, and I just spilled my coffee over myself and on some guy who looks like he's going to a funeral or a wedding. Judy, I'll grab the quart of oil from the stand on the way out. The car just keeps acting up. Thanks. She bustled out, the bell tinkling as she left. That girl needs a new car, Dixby commented. That girl needs a man to rescue her from herself. Judy shook her head as she put the cash in the till. They watched as Katie tried to start the small rusting hatchback at the pump. After a few tries, it roared to life, and a black cloud belched from behind as she pulled out of the parking lot minus one hubcap. "I'm going to miss this place when everyone leaves." Dixby sighed with a little nostalgia at the idea. He could afford to stay since his place was paid off. However, many other people would have no choice but to leave to find work, creating a ghost town. "You and me both." Judy grabbed a peppermint and offered it to Joy, who happily accepted as she tried to tie Dixby's short hair into a ponytail. "Pendle will just not be the same." "What do you think that stranger is here for?" he asked casually. "Not sure. He didn't strike me as the type to share confidences." Judy wiped down the counter. "You going across the street to wait and see if he comes back needing directions?" "I figured Joy and I would loiter at the hardware store, then settle at the milk box for a little ice cream," confirmed Dixby. "If Mr. Snooty happens to need directions, that's where we'll be." Judy chuckled as Dixby left, still letting Joy play with his hair as they passed the even less pleased than he was before stranger, who now sported a large coffee stain on his white shirt. 2 hours later, Dixby and Joy were finishing up their sundae and chatting to a group of people in the milk box, a local ice cream and bakery shop, when the car and the stranger returned for more gas. "I think this is my cue." Dixby smiled in satisfaction. Putting Joy on his shoulders, Dixby made his way across the street. Ignoring the stranger, who was pumping gas again, he entered the gas bar to lean against the counter. "You think he would have put in a full tank of gas the first time," Judy commented. "GPS can be unreliable at times." "It certainly can," Dixby agreed affably. He lifted Joy off his shoulders, letting her sit on the counter where he grabbed his handkerchief and wiped away a few smears of strawberry from her cheek. The stranger came in to pay for his gas, this time having the cash ready. "Would you happen to know where the Hawkins family has relocated to? I see their farm is to be auctioned." Suddenly, it clicked in Dixby's mind. This was Jake Ramsley. It had to be. Perhaps the man had finally come to his senses and was going to talk to Sarah Lee. Dixby smiled pleasantly as his mind ran through all sorts of possibilities. "They've gone to Ma Benson's old place. You need to take second line out past the Milners. Turn right before the bridge, take the left fork in the road to find Ma Benson's old place, which is now the Talbots, since they bought it 3 years ago. If you find the church that burnt down last spring, you've gone too far." "That would imply that I know where the Milners are," sighed Jake. "Afraid I'm not familiar with the area." "Oh, we're aware of that," Judy said pleasantly. "We don't get many strangers in our part of the country." "I'll draw you a map." Dixby grabbed an old flyer and pulled a pencil out of a jar near the till. He proceeded to make it as complicated as he could with information that really was not needed. "Here's the old peach yard. Over there is the brickyard, where it's shut down in '55. Now it's just a big wet hole in the ground, but my granddaddy used to work there. Most every home around here that has bricks, those bricks came from that yard. Now, if you follow this road, you'll get to the Hawks trailer park. But if you do, you'll have to turn around and come back, 'cause you'll have passed the cutoff. The side road that goes second line is here, but you could take Fairweather Road. It is a shorter way." Midway through Dixby's ramblings, Jake put a stop to it. He had already followed the directions of 5 other people and had not managed to find Sterling. "Could you just take me to the Hawkins directly? I'll gladly pay you for your time." "Well, that's a good idea." Dixby looked surprised, as though that had not been his intention all along. "Judy, do you mind looking after Joy for a little while? It won't take all that long." "Sure thing, Dixby." Judy was plaiting Joy's hair into a braid. "Joy and I will get up to all kinds of fun." "You are a peach," Dixby said to the woman, who just smiled and waved them away. As they walked to Jake's car, Dixby stuck out his hand. "Dixby Cooley." "Jake Ramsley." Jake shook Dixby's hand in greeting. Theory confirmed, thought Dixby with some satisfaction. He got into the passenger seat of the no longer shiny rental. Jake had been going down some gravel roads, Dixby acknowledged. He happily provided all sorts of conflicting directions as they drove, pointing out landmarks and telling a little history about the country as it passed by. Once or twice, he made Jake backtrack, saying he had been too busy telling Jake about a particular property's story that Dixby had plumb forgot to tell Jake where to turn. Sensing Jake's growing impatience, Dixby had him drive onto Fairweather Road. It was a gravel road, and a decent drive, until they came to a bushy area where Jake halted the car. "You want me to go through that?" Jake looked at the mud on the road. "Yup." Dixby had neglected to say that the road was called Fairweather because the only time it could be driven was during a bout of fair weather. It had rained 2 days ago, and near the brush there was an unusual quagmire of mud after any sort of precipitation. "You act like you've never been mudding before." "Will the car even make it?" Jake did not look confident. "Only one way to find out," Dixby said philosophically. "Gun it and give it a go." Jake decided enough was enough. He would probably wreck the rental car in that pit. "We went around the corner with the red barn with the weather vane on the top 3 times. You've been taking me in circles, Dixby. Now you want me to go through this." Dixby grinned. "You've been letting me take you in circles without saying anything. If you'd said something, I might have been a little more creative." "Sterling told me about the joy of country directions," Jake said dryly. "She did?" Dixby mused. Sarah Lee confiding about her country roots. He wondered just how cozy the pair had gotten. "Now what is this really about?" Jake put the car in park and gave the man beside him his full attention. "I'm just trying to get a sense of the sort of man you are," Dixby responded. "She told me about you." "What did she say?" Jake looked out over the brush and farm fields, trying to pretend that it didn't matter what Sterling might have said about him. "She likes you, and I wonder why," Dixby replied baldly. "You had yourself a temper tantrum and ruined her career, which had helped to support our town. Not exactly the most forgivable thing." Jake had the grace to wince. "I didn't know that she was helping to prop up Pendle." "There's a whole town of people ready to lynch you, Jake Ramsley. We take care of our own as best we can." Dixby scowled at Jake. "If you're here to make things even worse for her, you'll have to get through all of us." Jake sighed as he watched a flock of birds fly past. It was so quiet here compared to the city. "You're right. I was angry, and I did everything I could to make her as miserable as I was. When it comes to business, I was taught to cut the competition out quickly and harshly. I did that with Sterling, but this was not business, it was personal. I'm embarrassed about how far I took it now that I have had time to reflect on what I've done. My actions were inexcusable." "They were," readily agreed Dixby. "What is the point of your visit? If you're just here to apologize, that's not gonna cut it." "I know." Jake far preferred the city. Everything was much more convenient. Need a coffee? Within 1 block there was a coffee chain. Dry cleaning? 3 to 5 blocks. Restaurant? Just around a corner. Parking was a nightmare, but everything was close at hand and easy to find. Plus, the GPS was rarely wrong, unlike here. He decided to level with Dixby. "I need her to help with an investigation we have going on. Plus, I would just like to talk to her and try to clear things up. Never thought I would say it, but I miss her." Dixby shook his head with a small measure of disgust. "You are going to get shot down if you come at her like that." "What do you suggest I do?" Jake asked dryly. Dixby grinned. "I thought you were never going to ask. If you want to win her back, Mr. Moneybags, you are going to need to." If you enjoyed this chapter of Stranded with the Billionaire, Book 6 of the Ramsley Brothers series, don't forget to look for the next chapter. If you found any value in this video, think about subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss new chapters coming out each weekend. Usually we drop 2 chapters of each book in the series on each weekend, or another book that is complementary to the series or from the author. Again, you can just subscribe. It's free to you. If you click the little bell, you'll get the notification so you don't miss out. Happy listening!